convention, so get your tickets by this Monday, January 19th.
Draw date is Saturday, January 24th at the College. Some ticket outlets include islandetickets.com,
Legends Sports Bar, Point Fortin,
6 Liquor Mart, Bonds Road,
Mileage Mac, Port of Spain and San Fernando,
Pitt Street Market, RMP Avenue,
Mepco, Maribor,
Tony's Hardware, Belmont,
Shane's Supermarket, Aruca,
Hot Shop, Mukurapa Road,
St. James Pharmacy, opposite the police barracks,
Anderson Fashion, opposite City Gate, Icebox, Riverside Road, Direct,
Davide Discount Hardware, both outlets,
Color Shop, Diego Martin and St. James,
Juma Supermarket, Valencia,
MS Food City, Tebe,
Mirage Supermarket, Paget Main Road. Get your tickets now.
Call the College at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802.
Hello.
Welcome to Cover Star. This is Advanced Dynamics, where it all happened, the scene of the crime. For 4 days in December, this 22 by 30-foot studio turned an idea on paper into real-life reality TV. When these doors were shut behind performers, it was truth time. No audience, no applause. Just the cameras, the crew, and the ones who comment. Our mission is simple: bridge generations and genres. Jog our collective cultural memory. You're inside Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice. On WESN, the content capital.
WESN.
Good morning, this is Talking Point on WSN, the Content Capital Show. I'm Michael Small here, and it seemed as though it probably would not have happened given the fact that the situation with Clico and CL Financial and everything that happened during the last administration of Patrick Manning, of which our own contributor Karen Eshishero was significant person in that situation, and maybe we'll speak to her about it later on. Well, we will. But it seems as though, given the fact that they had two separate administrations between then and now, it took the UNC's second go-around to release the Commissioner Inquiry Report 2016, as opposed to a 2014 report on the whole situation of CL Financial. 676 pages. It is not properly digitized. It is scanned copies of paper documents. It makes a very arduous read. I have not been able to go through it all myself, to be honest. Just the sheer amounts probably is going to have the staff of various groups, whether media or state entities. I think, according to some reports, the staff of the Central Bank is going to have to take at least some time going over it. I don't know to what extent, you know, who works on the weekends, but the analysis, to have full comprehensive analysis of such a long document that again is not digitized, so you have to go through each page manually as though it was normal paper. You know, there's no digital technology to aid you in this, really. It makes me wonder, you know, exactly how was it stored and why was it stored this way. Now, the report, more or less, according to the media reports, because I myself haven't, I think I might have, I can't remember what I've read out of the report and what I got out of the media. But it confirmed more or less what the general narrative of what I believed to be the case with CI Financial. That it was a house of cards, that the financial position of one entity was more or less leveraged to be collateral for another entity or to provide loans for another entity. And as one description of the situation called it, it was two Ponzi schemes, one internal, one external. And essentially, the people in charge caused a house of cards where it could all topple if you just pull one out, but like a house of cards, the financial positions of the multiple entities involved depended on each other. And that amount of risk, because one thing to say, oh, one aspect of a company has risk, but when your risk is essentially kind of transferred or being relied upon to help your financial situation in other areas, and now you get into some creative accounting, maybe to some extent some unethical accounting, because certain principles and theories involved is not necessarily too dissimilar to the housing crash that happened not too long before. Ironically, both situations, this housing crash in the States, both situations essentially were too big to fail scenarios. So now we have to wait and see how things goes with regards to this. If there is still hope for criminal investigation to go through, that's dependent on the DPP. I don't think we have necessarily weighed on whether that could go through or not. It's so far from the moment of when it happened, because we're talking over 15 years. Remember, there were 3 administrations between then and now. And the fact that allegedly the DPP was supposed to have been looking at this since Dr. Rowley came into office. So I'll be honest, I think that this is just step 1 of potentially revealing what actually happened to the public. But this is not, in and of itself, a transparent resolution. Because now part of the question is, why did it take so long to reveal the Commission of Inquiry? And what has the authorities, if you want to say that there was an external Ponzi scheme and an internal Ponzi scheme, right? One, potentially fraud against investors, external, one, fraud against themselves and their own internal investments. That's cool, and I believe the language, right, improperly exposed the liabilities unrelated to its interests. This is CLICO itself. Assets were improperly dealt with. Improperly caused to provide security for transactions unrelated to its interests. Improperly caused to provide an interest-free current account facility to CLF. So all of these things, by improperly, we're venturing in the realm of illegality, right? That CLICO was forced to do things that went against the interests of itself and therefore its stakeholders, its investors, or the people who had their money in CLICO. The duty of care was therefore abandoned. You're getting into some real potential legal liability things there. But we didn't necessarily see, outside of the bailout and the government taking over, to what extent were there deals made, deals kept, maybe until now, deals that perhaps, on the surface at least, the public might not have agreed with, all things considered. I mean, certain people are dead. I don't know if that's now, okay, it's fine, we could investigate it now. Yes, but then what? Go after their estates, the estates of their heirs, depending on the situation. Well, if it's criminal charges, you can't. I don't know to what extent if that's all part of trying to wrap this up in a neat bow. But potentially, because it's so far removed, my fear is that the consequences that should be related to this matter will not be fully realized, and then, of course, you have to ask the question, what is to prevent it from happening again? Because we've already seen people in important positions play fast and loose with their interpretation of the law. And the most egregious ones are the ones dead sent in the public. That's by the politicians. But history has shown private business at times will circumvent the spirit of the law, the spirit of any social contract of doing no harm to your fellow citizens, to your neighbors. Yes, you're within the realm of some amount of legality or necessity, and then you could parlay that into a way to BS a soft landing spot for you, but not necessarily to the intended or unintended victims of whatever shenanigans you yourself decided to inflict upon us for the betterment of your own financial position. So let's see to what extent can the sentiments expressed by public speakers be actually realized in the perception of the public, whose perception one would think they're trying to manipulate or capture in the first place. Or will things seem ultimately hollow 15 years later? Now, a couple of things to get into at the top of the show. Did you, I don't know how many of you were part of that accident on Friday. I saw one social media video on it. I think there were several. One of them by one user. He was driving, or someone in the car was driving, in the opposite direction, and basically pointed out that he saw two accidents before, at least according to him, he saw two accidents before. And then when he reached the biggest pileup, I would imagine, he basically counted 7 cars. This is one of those things where I remember speaking about a situation where a pedestrian got knocked down. And this is something that people need to understand. A pedestrian kind of playing fast and loose with trying to cross a highway doesn't just risk their own life, but also you might think, oh, well, if a car hits me, I'm dead. What's, you know, it's just me. Anything that causes any car to do anything abnormal could lead to a pileup. So one of the things here is road safety coordinator of the CTPS pointed out poor driving practices, particularly motorists not maintaining a safe distance from the vehicles in front of them. This highlighted that because it's one thing for the car with the initial accident, whoever's fault or whatever was the cause, but then the car's behind. The first incident occurred just before peak hour, involved 8 vehicles. So, okay, the social media person counted 7 in my memory, but apparently it was 8. After a vehicle actually lost control and came to a sudden stop. That's all it took. I'm actually surprised and somewhat impressed that we don't have chain reaction accidents like this where we have multiple vehicles, you know, one after the other ramming into each other. Because the propensity for a lot of people to drive in relative traffic, you're driving around Savannah during relatively peak morning traffic. When traffic starts to loosen up and everyone is going more than 10 or 20, I tend to want to leave a space, and then someone has this smart idea, there's a space, I'll overtake. I'll fit into that space so I could overtake this car and get ahead. And now I have to increase the cushion. Because and sometimes, I mean, generally speaking, you're going to put a reasonable cushion. You're not going to try and calculate it to the inch. But sometimes some of them, they're not even sure if they could fit. They just go in. And then you have to pump the brakes quick and make sure they have enough room. Otherwise, their rear is going to clip your front. I'm surprised we don't have more accidents like this. I know in certain highways, let me just say this, certain highways that may or may not be single lane, A lot of drivers like to literally ride up to the bumper to be ready to overtake. And I'm surprised they don't have a lot more accidents there because of that driving. So, it is what it is. Meanwhile, in a twist, and to some extent this is good news, I do not relish in the results, the outcome. I don't relish in the severe consequences for the individuals involved, but I do appreciate the attempt of the TTPS to have a proactive stance against this sort of crime. The police apparently had a sting operation with regards to a Facebook marketplace transaction, right? That resulted in a shootout that resulted in 2 suspects being killed and a third being injured and having to be hospitalized. And a 4th apparently escaped. The police officers of the sting met the suspects near Mount Hope Community Center. And again, I don't necessarily know to what extent is that a safe location to conduct these things, but that's where these fraudsters, they don't want to necessarily go inside a police station or right outside a police station to do this sort of stuff. Then again, crimes do happen outside police stations. So the suspects apparently announced a robbery. This is, I find, kind of funny. They began shooting at the police officers. They realized they had been set up. So I do wonder if this is not so much a red flag with regards to the police operations and procedures and rules of engagement, but rather just the reporting. Because I think it seems as though they announced a robbery and something kind of realized that probably the response by the victims was not the norm. They realized that something is wrong and they began to open fire. The officers reportedly returned fire. And we got what we got. Yes, I understand. On some level, this is an area where I do give the police the benefit of the doubt. That said, and I'm going to say this, I can't remember what triggered this thought in me over the weekend. Oh, we'll get to that. It's with regards to the regulations of the Special Zone of Operations. I was taking a read of that as well. That document is out there that you could see. And essentially, there is the use of body cameras are not a must. If available, they should be used. Language was something to that effect. This is, I believe, in the law as it was passed in the lower house, or at least what was proposed, right? I believe this is a copy. I got this from somebody else. I didn't verify the source. At the end of the day, we still have to see what is eventually passed and presented. So my issue was I'm kind of getting fed up of body cameras being treated as an optional piece of equipment. So normally I want to give the police the benefit of the doubt, and I'm willing to say in this situation, sure. But anyway, I'm really tired of, at this point, what I believe to be the TTPS officers who are involved in shooting to essentially get a free pass. Body cameras should not be optional. And the price of them, yes, I get it, it's not going to be cheap, but the price of them compared to what they would do with regards to the trust and confidence in the service, trust and confidence in the Minister of Homeland Security and that ministry, trust and confidence in the AG and the Prime Minister and a whole administration. The benefits that they would have for the trust and confidence in the government and the fight against crime by the people of this country. The fact that someone's being this cheap is rather pathetic. And it then makes any sort of message, particularly about crime, where anybody wants to say, oh, we care about you. Or, of course, somebody's going to try and spin it and say, why are you trying to protect the criminals? Hey, at some point, the need for police cameras to protect ordinary citizens is going to come up. And it won't be there. So any sort of message about crime where it said, oh, we care about you, or we're doing our best, we are providing the TTPS with what they need. Body cameras is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Because there is very little trust and confidence in the TTPS. Here's the sad reality. Perhaps, maybe if they get the crime statistics, if they manage to keep it down, the general public won't care. But at what point, once you make life easier for people, the bar will be set higher. Just look at the states. When crime starts to affect you less and less, public outcry of police violence that cannot be proven to be justifiable rises more and more. You fail to learn that lesson? Well, you end up being the big guy with the analogies that makes no sense. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get more into these special zone situations. The whole racial side of it has continued. And then at least one community has pointed out their concerns about the stigmatization of the stereotypes that might befall on communities that might be declared a zone. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Hello. Welcome to Cover Star. This is Advanced Dynamics, where it all happened, the scene of the crime. For 4 days in December, this 22 by 30-foot studio turned an idea on paper into real-life reality TV. When these doors were shut behind performers, it was truth time. No audience, no applause. Just the cameras, the crew, and the ones who comment. Our mission is simple: bridge generations and genres. Jog our collective cultural memory. You're inside Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice. On WESN, the content capital.
This coming Monday, January 19th, it's your last day to purchase physical tickets for a massive 3-car raffle promoted on behalf of Queens Royal College.
There will be no further extensions, so get your tickets by this Monday, January 19th.
Draw date is Saturday, January 24th at the college. Some ticket outlets include ICNTT.com,
Legends, Sports Bar, Point Fortin,
6 Liquor Mart, Barnes Road,
Mileage Mac, Port of Spain and San Fernando,
Pitt Street Market, R.A.P. Avenue,
Mepco, Marbar,
Tony's Hardware, Belmont,
Shane's Supermarket, Aruka,
Hot Shop, Mukarapa Road,
St. James Pharmacy, opposite the police barracks,
Anderson Fashion, opposite City Gate, Icebox, Riverside Road, Current,
Dabity Discount Hardware, both outlets,
Color Shop, Digger Martin and St. James,
Juma Supermarket, Valencia,
MS Food City, Tebe,
Mirage Supermarket, Paget Main Road. Get your tickets now.
Call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802.
As you come in. Long time I see you. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy!
Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them.
Yeah, total waste. So I supposed to stay home whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about them.
You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it's your mother or your sister.
Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two, better know what time it is. It's only me, you know.
I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Bill 2026 was passed in the lower house last week. And now the whole debate with regards to the racial dimension has continued, much to my aggravation. This is one of the things where I can't necessarily fault the government for something like this. The assumption that there's racism in it, regardless of what the actual result might end up being, I'm not comfortable with. Because essentially, the logic says any sort of anti-crime initiative is going to be racist, right? Dare I ask, where were police exercises conducted during the SOE that started in December 2024? What communities did they have police units going in to maybe conduct searches or to apprehend individuals? Is it that that state of emergency had no police exercises during it? That no exercises were conducted? That no suspects were looked for? All right. I mean, we don't seem to have as much detention orders then as we did with the following or subsequent state of emergency. So now the Minister of Defense, which is very interesting that he is the one championing this, but I guess to some extent he's a lawyer, so as it's still in the legislative phase, his background might be better suited to speak on this than the Minister of Homeland Security, even though it technically is a Homeland Security function, regardless of the involvement of the Defense Force personnel. He said that the opposition was creating a false narrative. The false narrative was that the Prime Minister, acting on her own, could declare PNM-controlled areas to be subject to zones of special operations with the loudly implicit suggestion that zones could be declared to target a particular race. Now, yes, technically that is possible. But generally speaking, as I said, any sort of targeted crime-fighting initiative would come across that way. Maybe this is why the initial state of emergency did not have limited curfews on certain areas, as some people requested, because to name those areas would essentially stereotype the people in those areas and somewhat put yourself up to potentially being seen as discriminatory, having discriminatory practices with regards to, well, what areas are you saying are crime hotspots? You know, what demographic are you singling out? Geographic or racial? And Minister Stage, part of his defense is that, well, the composition of the National Security Council is racially diverse and has or includes Afro-Trinbagonians. All right, fair enough. Also, of course, the TTPS itself and the Defense Force has a large representation of Afro-Trinbagonians as well as, to some extent, the Ministry of National Security. I can't speak to that per se, right? So, I get it. That's, to some degree, one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like the whole racial card. Again, you can get that result, but it's going to take more, and we're going to have to actually see it. This is one of those things where you have to see them to prove that they're going to do it, right? If you have a situation where there is no crime being committed, then you can't accuse someone of committing a crime. Now, I get it. The unfortunate reality is policies that can be utilized in a discriminatory manner does require extensive scrutiny. does require detailed scrutiny. So I can't necessarily fault the opposition for wanting to scrutinize the bill and what's proposed in it along this angle. But on some level, for it to be, for it to have any legs, for it to go further than just an initial, hey, how are you going to do this? Why are you doing this? You know, we suspect it's for bad reasons. And then, well, think about it. The Minister of Defense and the Minister of Homeland Security are, yes, they might not be 100%, but they're definitely not 100% Indo-Trimegonia. However, there's another dimension to this. MP Keith Scotland, I think, is one of the people who brings up a much more practical argument. Because, of course, the concern is the racism. And again, I pointed out to the social media post where I didn't necessarily want to go racism, at least not first. But we do have a problem that has been shown to be an issue, right? Because, again, you could say targeting certain places that is perceived to be crime hotspots could be centered on racism. The problem is, on some level, the country, the national security apparatus, at least with certain areas, perceives them to be crime hotspots. It is what it is, right? To say that there's a racial motivation behind that, I'm not ready to go there. But those areas do stigmatize people because the stereotype of, well, you had to be a criminal, you come from a crime hotspot. Meanwhile, on a certain level, history says not everybody that lives in an area perceived to be a crime hotspot is involved in illegal activity. What are those people supposed to do when they grew up there? They don't necessarily have the money to relocate just to avoid the stigmatization of living there. So what are they supposed to do? They need to earn money if they want to move out there. They need a job to do that. But if where they live, the stigma of, oh, you're from hotspot X or hotspot Y causes people to not want to hire them, they can't get good paying jobs, what are they supposed to do? So Keith Scotland points out, Zone Bill, this is the headline, will worsen stigma in crime hotspots. Because when you think about it, on some level, this is not an unreasonable claim to make. And this should be the first thing that you go. Don't go all the way to the extreme, you know, when you don't necessarily have a strong enough circumstantial case because we haven't experienced it yet, or actual factual accounts of what has happened once it reaches that point where it's in effect. So he said, we are not here to bring color and race into this debate. We are here to bring reality to TNT. Right? In replacing one extraordinary security measure with another under a different name but with the same dire consequences, because this is true, law enforcement efforts to deal with crime hotspots, quote unquote, does lead to people perceiving certain areas a certain way and stereotyping everybody there a certain way. Zones of special operation risk becoming permanent extension style SOEs long after the initial legal emergency has been extinguished. Well, that's another concern. Stick a pin in that. How does the law-abiding citizen who is cordoned off in those areas avoid stigma when he has done nothing wrong? Law-abiding citizens who already live in marginalized and stigmatized areas will now live under perpetual collective suspicion. This is what is being created. The prejudicial effect of this legislation far outweighs any probative value it may bring to this government. Are we all going to live with collective suspicion? Well, no, we all aren't. The point is a certain geographic area is potentially going to have to do so, because I get the spirit of the bill. In times of certain emergencies or police emergencies, you could declare a certain area, a special zone. Now for now, it's temporary, except what is in the law to say you can't just keep doing it back to back to back to back to back indefinitely. I've yet to get a good answer to that question, which I had last week. And I believe MP Keith Scotland is more or less saying that, right? That there seems to be no time limit really. And then there's the part about 180 days. I did kind of gloss over that in the actual document. I apologize, I didn't read it out. But what is the limit to prevent you from just keep declaring a zone, whatever the time limit is, a zone of special operation? So, and then now, the more times, the more days you have curfews and it's cordoned off and the police are treating it as a zone of special operations and conducting operations there, the longer it goes on, the more the stigma will be. So how do you deal with that? Because here's the sad reality. As he said, you're replacing a state of emergency with a zone of special operation. State of emergency has a theoretical limit because once you deal with the emergency, it should be over. Zone of special operation, theoretically, ideologically, might not have a limit. What is the emergency or crime? Or there's criminals in there? Now I get it, to some extent, in theory, it's supposed to be even more short-term than a state of emergency. But when you have a crime hotspot, and we do not have means of transparency and accountability with regards to things like this, to hold our elected officials to account. The previous government did a state of emergency for crime. Crime was high. We do a state of emergency. What was the emergency? Oh, we were bad at our jobs. That was technically the emergency when the PNM rolled out the first state of emergency. Then we had the second state of emergency where there was a threat against the government. We haven't necessarily seen more than just the state make the claim. Now, on some level, on the back end, we needed some amount of accountability. Not that we needed our politicians to get attacked or worse yet, hurt. But still, I know that we're not, you suppress an incident from happening, you're not actually going to see it happen. I get that. But then we had basically an extension to that SOE technically for crime, AKA, we don't think we could do our job without a state of emergency, not too dissimilar to the last guy. And where's the accountability with regards to the population on that? Because as much as, and I'll cut it short here, as much as Minister Sturge is trying to say that the zones of special operations are not like the state of emergency, when you are essentially operating with, well, we don't need a warrant to do certain things, we could search vehicles and persons and homes without a warrant, and we could do you have similar powers, and some of those powers, we're now just waiting, anticipating, not relishing in the anticipation, mind you, but anticipating the lawsuits coming from the current administration's state of emergencies detention orders. We're waiting to see what comes of that. I can't even remember if the previous administration had a similar situation where they had people who eventually had to be released who were not charged, and to what extent we could get lawsuits from that, just from the current administration state of emergency. We already did not, I hope most people did not view it as a positive, that even on this show, however many years removed from the partnership's time when they declared that state of emergency, we were speaking about cases of settlements or damages having to be paid to people that sued the state and won. And on the surface, it seems like the situations are not dissimilar with regards to people who were detained then to people who are detained now. And if this is how we're going to deal with crime, we're going to lock people up. We have no capacity to investigate them for whatever reason. I don't know why. And then we're going to have to release them because we can't actually prosecute them in any meaningful way. And then they're going to sue us and they're going to get six-figure settlements or six-figure payouts. Is this the crime plan? I didn't realize the TTBS budget was so large. Who's paying for this? Oh, I guess this is why we have to increase customs and excise and alcohol and, the fines. The fines. By the way, I've already heard somebody say that they heard people talking about quotas, and by people I mean agents of the state talking about having quotas to give out tickets. How true is it? I don't know. It's an anecdotal claim that is hearsay. You get enough of these anecdotal hearsays, you'll get a very negative public perception. It's almost like if the race to the bottom continues. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will welcome an old friend. Stay tuned. This is Dr. Bernard WSN. We'll be right back after this.
In this studio in the POS, CoverStar moved from paper to real-life reality. A conversation between our musical past and the present that collided bang into the future. CoverStar, where music history meets its next voice.
Don't stop.
On WESN, the content capital.
They gave us the music.
I feel like home.
They gave us the memory.
Woman, you could run away too.
They gave us the rhythms of life.
Trinidad and Tobago. Join us for a special tribute to our legendary musical icons who have passed on in, gone, but not forgotten.
Including Bunny, Swallow, Singing Francine, Shadow, Arrow, Maestro, Rootsman, Blacks, Sandoli, The Mighty Terror, plus lots more. Their music still lives on in our heart. An unforgettable night as we celebrate their legacy in Gone, but Not Forgotten. Wednesday, February 4th at Napa and Thursday, February 5th at Sapa. Showtime both nights, 6:30 p.m. Your master of ceremonies, Sonny Bling.
Tickets $300 and $250.
Early bird tickets bought by Monday, January 26th cost $50 less.
For more info, call 732-3402. Gone, but not forgotten.
This coming Monday, January 19th, it's your last day to purchase physical tickets for a massive 3-call raffle promoted on behalf of Queens Royal College.
There will be no further extensions, so get your tickets by this Monday, January 19th.
Draw date is Saturday, January 24th at the college. Some ticket outlets include IslandEtickets.com,
Legends, Sports Bar, Point Fortin,
6 Liquor Mart, Bonds Road,
Mileage Mac, Port of Spain, and San Fernando,
Pitt Street Market, R&P Avenue,
Mepco, Marabar,
Tony's Hardware, Belmont,
Shane's Supermarket, Aruca,
Hot Shop, Mukurapa Road,
St. James Pharmacy, opposite the police barracks,
Anderson Fashion, opposite City Gate, Icebox, Riverside Road, Durham,
Davide Discount Hardware, both outlets,
Color Shop, Diego Martin and St. James,
Juma Supermarket, Valencia,
MS Food City, Tebe,
Mirage Supermarket, Paget Main Road. Get your tickets now.
Call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802.
As you come in. Long time I see you. This station pumping. Ready for children party. Mommy!
Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Stephen to see about them.
Yes, total waste. So I supposed to stay home the whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about that.
You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it's your mother or your sister.
Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two, better know what time it is. It's only me, you know.
I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay.
Alright.
Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
In the studio now, you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
And we're back here on Talking About WESN, and joining us is an old friend. While we do appreciate the work of Inspector Calendar, it is good to see, in good spirits and good health, Acting ASP Christopher Arun. Welcome back to Talking Points.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Good day to your viewers and members of the public and your staff, colleagues.
So,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yes. I mean, this is one of those weird things with Talking Point where, you know, depending, you know, you still say Happy New Year to people that you haven't. Yes, but it's like January 19th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's been so long.
Yeah, it's my brother's birthday today. Yeah.
Oh, well, happy birthday. Brother of ASP Arun.
Thanks.
So I hope it's a good one. This Monday seems to be relatively decent. Yeah. But you're here to speak about, well, road safety and how that relates to wrecking.
Right, yeah. So wrecking, you know, the Commission wanted everybody to know that, listen, there is going to be wrecking in and around the Port of Spain area. And there has been some feedback that it's malicious, that it's done to raise revenue, and this is not the case. What we've been seeing, especially recently, we saw a fire truck trying to get through traffic.
Right.
Right on the corner by police admin there. And because of the inconsiderate parking by members of the public, and could possibly be police officers, they parked on the corner, and fire truck couldn't even pass to get to its emergency.
Because there's certain corners where you need that extra room. And if you're a long vehicle.
So, so they instructed that the vehicles be wrecked and whatnot. But nonetheless, we are seeing inconsiderate, improper parking in the Port of Spain area. And we've had issues with emergency vehicles getting through that traffic and whatnot. And there are one-sided lanes that you could park on. So on a street, on a particular street, you're allowed to park on one side and leave the other side clear. But we are seeing people parking on both sides.
Yes.
And then the traffic builds up in the center, and there's no way for the emergency vehicles, especially, to pass.
So right, because if you have space, even if there's 2 lanes of traffic, if you have 2 lanes of traffic,
somebody can pull over.
You know, as traffic is going down, people could kind of filter into that 1 lane and get out of the way. But when there's 1 lane of traffic, there's literally nowhere.
Nowhere to go. And I, as a police officer working in Port of Spain, experience the same issues. I know it's very difficult to really respond, and it's to emergency and get through that traffic. So we would like members of the public to understand it's not a malicious intent of the police service to carry out these activities.
I mean, I can't necessarily fault that for where people should not be parked, because there are certain corners in Woodbrook where, you know, including one right here, where it's like, well, you know, if you park on that corner, it might not necessarily be a safety issue for normal drivers, but it definitely could at least be a property damage issue, right? What gets me is, you know, there are certain obvious examples of, you should not be parked there. The Savannah comes to mind most of all, where, yes, there are parts of the Savannah with a shoulder, with an actual full shoulder where you could park.
Right.
But not all of the Savannah has a shoulder.
No. There are parts that are restricted. Like by the U.S. Embassy, there's restricted parking there all the time. However, people park way up by the bend.
Yes.
And there's only so many vehicles could fit on that bend.
Yes.
And people still park outside of that.
Well, even worse, the area opposite the gardens and the president's house.
Yeah.
There are areas where the shoulder disappears.
It allows parking so you could go and run.
So there is a shoulder.
Yeah.
But it's not all the way around.
No.
So where the shoulder disappears at the beginning and at the end, more cars come in. So I now, as a driver, and I'm not talking about people who are speeding. Normal speed, 40. I'm not expecting my lane to all of a sudden be blocked by a parked car. But at least by that end, you could see it coming generally, right?
Yeah.
If you go by, that square, Memorial Park, is it?
Yeah.
That is a right turn around the Savannah. Yeah. And at night, if you are on the inner lane,
especially at night,
people are parked there in front of the entrance where, usually they want to get the food court, right?
Yeah.
I've even seen people park Mercedes-Benz or cars like that there. There's no shoulder.
Yeah, and they park.
It's a blind corner.
It's dark.
It's dark.
It's dark, yeah.
You know, if I am, again, normal speed.
Yeah.
And if I don't necessarily drive the Savannah at night, I could frequently drive the Savannah during the day.
Yeah.
Because initially this is how it caught me, right?
Yeah.
I'm not driving at night, so now it's a Friday, Thursday, whatever. And I'm not expecting a car to be there.
And if you're not from the Port of Spain area, you happen to be visiting for the first time,
yes.
like you don't know the kind of road conditions, or you don't know the traffic conditions, it's going to come up on you, and you could cause an accident.
If you stop, you might end up like the multi-car accident on Friday.
Yeah. Oh.
You get a chain reaction with people behind you.
That was
because
like 12 vehicles, I think, yeah.
Right, because they're not expecting you to stop.
No.
And if you try to swerve off to the side, there's probably a car next to you.
Yeah, and well, rain had just fallen that morning.
Right.
And that's one of the major issues with the road conditions with the accident. So rain had just fallen, and it had caused, it contributed to the accident.
So there are situations where wrecking is safety. The problem, of course, is, you know how people are.
Yeah.
The perception is that it's not really for safety, it's a quota.
No,
right?
It's really for safety, because people can crash into those vehicles, especially around that savannah we spoke about.
Yes.
By the food court, by...
and there might be other areas as well, where you're just not expecting people to be parked here.
Yeah.
And it's causing an issue.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. I think part of it is, you got to be aware about where you're parking.
Yeah, and I mean, there are laws on the books for parking. So there are no parking signs. And then persons park, as we mentioned earlier, on the corner. So you're supposed to park within 9 meters of the corner. So, or beyond 9 meters of the corner, sorry. So you have, so the record goes through the Port of Spain area. It detects, the officer detects our offense. And the officer is supposed to conduct inquiries. He or she is supposed to conduct inquiries to find the driver. If he fails to find the driver, and I've actually experienced where you're looking for the driver and you can't find the driver. The driver sometimes when you're in a store somewhere close by, but when you ask, nobody knows the driver.
So, and to be fair, and I said this last week, on our very street, at the top of the street, cars used to park right on the corner, right? Yeah. And one day a wrecker came, and the officer got out, and they looked for the guy, and the guy came and he got to move his car.
Right.
So you saw that police officer.
But he's entitled to still get a ticket. It's up to the officer to use their discretion.
Right.
So he could either warn you, and you leave. They could give you a
what
ticket.
Makes it tricky is because we tend to try to find loopholes, and in this case, you're not supposed to turn right. It's a one-way street.
Correct.
Where you're not supposed to turn right. So you think that the right side. You could park on the corner, right? And it's one of those cases where on a practical level I could understand the argument, but the yellow line was uncovered.
Yeah.
So it is what it is, right? And I think on some level perhaps the officer probably used his discretion in the case and didn't necessarily come down hard on him for that, right? And I've seen certain corners, depending on the geometry of the streets, where you see, I don't know how official it is, so I avoid parking there, basically. You see a white line.
Yeah, on the side of the pavement.
Right? Kind of like over the yellow line.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is you kind of have to understand, okay, let's just say that's allowed. You could park up to the corner there because the yellow line. At the very least, you can't just say, oh, well, you can park on any corner now.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like, you can't assume.
And there are persons who also park on the footpath of, let me say, a zebra crossing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so you have that zebra crossing for pedestrians. You park on that is a footpath, and you can get wrecked for that.
And also parking in front of people's gates.
Correct. So in Woodbrook, especially in Woodbrook area, we find that a lot because we had caused to wreck vehicles. They park in front of person's gate to go and buy food or buy something nearby.
And even on businesses' gates.
Yeah.
Because what if there's an emergency?
Yeah.
That's part of it, right?
Yeah. In some jurisdictions, they actually wreck the vehicle or give you a ticket, even if you're parking in front of your own gate and blocking your own driveway.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets kind of iffy, right?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, I mean, how's the police going to know? But on the other hand...
They're okay. So in certain jurisdictions, it's okay.
Right. You're not talking about here. You're talking about around the world.
Yeah, around the world.
Right. Hey, we could go more into that, but we have Diego Martin on the line, so we'll take the call. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, Sean, and a happy New Year to ASP Arun.
Morning, good day. How are you doing?
I am good. This is for the police and by extension the leadership. ZOSO, with respect to traffic, parking and things. In these areas, I am putting on the record that when a zone is classified as a ZOSO area, no parking on the road should be part of it. This will assist the police with respect to rapid response when an issue happens. The other issue, I was fortunate to visit the Lange Park area. And I'm hoping CNCT goes down there and put a microphone in front of the residents. They will welcome the area being called Azoso area because they will have the police in the area to mitigate crime. So people saying that they don't want it and a stigma is not an issue. People want safety and security. I saw the Rich Plain interviews, and most of those people from Rich Plain are not people who were there in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Those are recent migrants into that area. So most of the people who were inside there have migrated out of that area because of the crime. I know that. I am from Diego Martin. The most high-profile person that lived in that area on the hill was a fella they called Phillips, who eventually became, you laughing, Mr. Arun, who eventually became a high-profile. And you know what we're talking about, Abu. But what my critical point is this morning, Clico, the biggest white-collar crime that has been perpetrated on the taxpayers and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And we have not charged anybody else. And I am sticking on that issue, and I'm going to be pinning it on a number of ministers, particularly PNM ministers, who were part and parcel of the whole investigation. They were also lawyers in the Coleman issue. They became SC. For example, the current Attorney General has pointed us to, I assume he was talking about money laundering. Look at the person who living close to the Governor General in Barbados. Look at all the properties outside. He said people conspired to do an act that he said is fraud. Who are those people? The Prime Minister called out a Muslim man who was a minister of local government who was an Attorney General. We have another Attorney General who abandoned Trinidad and become a appeal court judge in the Eastern Caribbean. All of them was in the Coleman inquiry. They knew what Salmon letters were sent to people. They knew what Coleman basically said. He said, if there is an adverse finding on you, we will give you an opportunity to basically respond to it. They know all of that. So when KCR were choosing those people, did he ask them if they have anything out of it? And I'm going back to O'Halloran and Eric Williams. O'Halloran did a lot of things under Eric Williams. Did Eric Williams facilitate it, or he turned a blind eye? And fast forward, we have the former Prime Minister and a lot of his operatives, including a PNM treasurer who flees the country, and he was identified with the former Attorney General with the Muslim name, colluding. So I'm spinning everything on that. And I'm waiting for my good friend Karen on Wednesday, and I will further bring the evidence with newspaper report as to those 3 PNM ministers who avoided being able to help in the corrective action and the preventive action. Very 3 prominent former PNM ministers are gone. Have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. I mean, on some level, and this is very speculative on my part, but you could, I think it is not totally unreasonable to say, yes, the partnership was there for 1 term of office, why they didn't do anything, but it was compounded by then subsequently 10 years of a PNM administration that also did nothing, right? You don't necessarily expect the situation to be solved immediately now for now. So is the later PNM administration more culpable for the lack of results? Potentially yes, depending on the timing of things and what your expectations are. It does, of course, help for the case of the UNC and the partnership that now a subsequent UNC administration is like, we'll put it out there. My only thing is I don't like the fact that whoever was actually storing the records did not have an actual digitized copy when apparently there's a digital PDF of a 2014 document, and the 2016 is just scanned pages, 676 scanned pages. It's a very awkward read when I actually found it. And loading it on your computer just takes forever. It's I don't know if it's being, like the logistics about it is being well thought out, or, you know, there's a lot of things, very minor nitpicks that I just don't like about it, but that doesn't have to mean anything. Your claim that the PNM has some culpability with the handling of the matter after the fact, I can't necessarily fault you for that. But we have to wait and see how this all turns out, because hopefully it doesn't turn into a further political circus. It is what it is. With regards to the zones of special operations, I'll say this. I think there's a difference between the police wanting to go into an area to prevent a crime wave, say an area where there's home invasion. So you go into the area to stop home invasions. Yeah. You have a zone of special operations, there's no stigma there. Now, if you have an area that is perceived to be a high crime area, an area where there are a lot of criminals, you see it's what type of crime. I know someone that left Gonzales because there was a killing, like 2 houses down from him, weeks before, and the level of violence at night, it reached the point where he's like, this don't make sense, right? He wasn't worried about necessarily robberies or things like that. He was worried about, the violence, because now he's like, I have to get him a house before 5.
Yeah, well, there are areas in Trinidad where you have a lot of violence, you have a lot of criminal activity.
And the problem is, he's not a criminal, he was living there. Somebody else that we both mutually know that is technically of a very different demographic, socially and economically. Also, I believe, at least at one point in time, lived in Gonzales, right? And at different parts. But the point is, the stigma of if you have this operation, I mean, because the hotspots already have a stigma. That's my point.
Well, what we have recognized in terms of the migration of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, so I have actually worked in some of these hotspot areas that we tend to call hotspot areas, and they are not the criminal element is really the minority.
Yes.
Right, and you have a lot of nice, very well brought up persons in these same communities.
Yes.
I've actually experienced that, spoken to them, interacted with them.
Some of them might be highly qualified.
They have
highly educated.
Highly educated, highly qualified. They can carry a conversation with you as opposed to what you really think and experience in some cases. And there's a very minor amount of persons that commit these offenses. But what we're recognizing now is that with the migration of crime into different areas, urban areas, developed areas, you see the proliferation of the gangs. So you have the ABG and the 6 and the 9s and whatnot. And
ABG is new to me,
anybody gets it. Anybody gang. And what they do, they infiltrate areas and they feed on these innocent persons.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we've recognized that. We have gang units in every division working on these issues, working on these criminal elements. And but they tend to, when they migrate, they tend to migrate into a particular area of a community. And so in saying is
a lower income area that's more vulnerable. Maybe the police presence is not as big there per se.
You know, the road infrastructure, these things are poor.
It's not like it's a community where, there's major traffic.
Correct.
You know, like maybe El Socorro, parts of El Socorro, parts of Tunapuna. There's major, just the public is there. So, of course, you know, police and security services is going to pass through there.
So, the gang activity involves the selling of drugs and firearms and the trade itself. And we have to pay special attention to these areas. So, within communities, there are communities. Right. And we have to pay special attention to this. So, you could be living in an urban built-up area, and like even El Socorro, as you mentioned, and we have many gangs as they separate themselves into these groups existing in these communities. So you have like 2-3 gangs in a community, and this is what brings in the warfare and whatnot. And this is where we have to concentrate on. So if the bill is passed and the hotspot, that hotspot police, you know, that area is deemed a hotspot, And we have to pay better attention or even more attention with the assistance of the army and whoever. This would lend to bringing down the crime rate.
The thing is, like, you have certain communities where perhaps there's enough traffic and public presence. Because when you go to certain areas of East Port of Spain or in Laventil or Mova, you don't have a lot of public traffic going through. You have only Lady Young, right? You have
on the main roads,
right? Right. But like Cascade St. Anne's, you have a mix of economic brackets there. And there was a situation where there was a gang hit at a bar, at least one innocent bystander who I am acquainted with, a family member of theirs, was killed. And I believe the thought was the gangster who was the target had some amount of perception that St. Anne's was like a safe area for him.
Exactly, and that's the next thing too. Trinidadians, we tend to believe, that certain areas are hotspots. But from my experience, in almost every area in Trinidad and Tobago are becoming hotspots. There are hotspots within these communities. So you might have a hotspot within Glencoe, you might have a hotspot within St. Anne's, you might have a hotspot in Port of Spain, proper Port of Spain, right out the road.
Right,
Remember the murder right out the road there?
Yes.
So and so we have hotspots within nearly every community.
Like you're literally describing an area that is maybe like a span of like 3 houses. Where there's just a certain level of activity.
And there are commercial properties along the entire roadway, except for this small area. And we've actually seen activity there. If you drive, anybody who drives through that street would see.
I think also at night there were some tourists that were accosted on that road as well. Last year.
Persons who are arrested in that area, the Port of Spain task force always hits that area.
Right.
And they always get stuff there. And, well, based on the evidence, they will probably get prosecuted. But nonetheless, you could see it openly. Anyway, if you drive up that street. So, and it's a very small minority of persons on that.
I think the thing is, my concerns about stigmatization is not that, we shouldn't do a thing. It's like at the end of the day, you gotta go where the crime is, right? And do what's best to try to treat with it. However, on some level, acknowledgement of the fact and maybe it takes a public awareness campaign, you know what I mean?
Well,
like to try to counteract
but
that thought.
I don't think that stigmatization at this time is an issue because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. The crime is everywhere. So maybe what the argument is that it shouldn't be just 1 or 2 places. I think that is an issue by itself.
And which you might actually see in the rollouts when, for various reasons, because I guess part of it that we are somewhat underestimating is, some community that is not considered a community where criminals live, maybe they have a lot of home invasions. So you want to cordon off that area because you're like, there's people staking it out, or there's people...
No, I don't think that is...
You don't think they'll do that?
No, I don't think that is it. I think where there's a lot of criminal activity existing,
well,
not potentially exist, but existing.
Right, so what I mean to say, there's a crime wave in that area.
You're right.
Right? The criminals might be going there frequently to conduct whatever it is that they want to conduct.
I don't think that, no, I don't think
they won't go after them that way?
I don't think that was the intention.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rather, it's to find where it is that they hold up.
So we would have data on hotspots based on certain criminal activity, like drugs and firearms and whatnot being used. And I think that would be the
well, I mean, part of it is, I guess, to some extent, based on what you said in past conversations, sometimes you might be surprised where some of these safe houses are.
Yeah.
It might not be in the hotspot areas.
It might be the traditional hotspot areas. No, definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, it seems rather obvious if you try and stash millions of dollars in drugs in a hotspot area, you're just asking for it. Right? We know of remote stashes, and then every now and then you get hauls like that years ago in Diego Martin, where you had all of that with the cocaine that was discovered there. All right, back to road safety. I know that.
So I mean, Carnival is upon us.
Yes.
We have a lot of fetes and events.
Well, this is where some of what you were, the concerns that you raised could be very applicable, because when you have a fete, people trying to get a park. And one of the things that we take for granted is you can't have an emergency at a fete.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it has happened. And the ambulance needs to come in, the police officers, even the fire service.
I think I can't remember the full story, but Andre was talking about a sporting event.
Right, yeah.
Where the team was trying to leave on their bus, and like the whole logistics of it was a mess.
Right, so we tried to encourage them to have a police escort.
Right, and that wasn't necessarily properly, you know, thought out, because when you have the crowds and combined with the parking and combined with when people are looking to enter or leave a venue.
At the same time, yeah, they need to take that into consideration when having these events.
But also at any public as well, you know, if they say you can't park here because of XYZ, you can't stop and get on and be upset.
So there are events right now, like in the Savannah, you have the Carnival Village and their events and whatnot. And it seems to be running very smooth in terms of the parking and the coordination of the
well, they did
events.
move it further back, so that
made that help, yeah. And then, you know, you might have to walk a little way to get some food, but nonetheless. There is, that has been running smoothly. But in terms of the events, yes, it's carnival time. You know, we'll be out with law enforcement, we'll be out in terms of drinking and driving. You know, the penalty is so high now, so there'll be a lot of roadblocks in the night, during the day, especially in the evening.
I mean, here's the catch. If you think that police officers and traffic wardens are on a quota system, think about it. If that's what you believe as the public, shouldn't you then, I don't know, not assume I'll get away with it as I normally would do?
Yeah.
If it seems as though law enforcement is, you know, emphasizing, oh, we're going to go after this.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you should take the hint. You don't have to like the hint. You don't have to agree with the hint. You don't have to think that the hint is fair. But there's a big hint to say, don't do this now. You know, but then again, we had a state of emergency and people were kind of just operating however they wanted to during a whole two to three whole states of emergency last year.
Right. So in terms of the traffic safety during the carnival period as well, like for example, that accident that occurred in that area, I think it was El Socorro on the highway. Yeah, that unfortunately it seems to be happening more prevalently than usual. And
multi-car accidents?
Yeah.
Okay, because I now said I'm surprised we don't have more.
Oh no,
but you're saying it's picking up?
Yeah, basically for the past few months there's always been an accident there.
Really?
Every month, yeah, at least once per month in that area.
With more than one vehicle?
Yeah, with multiple cars and whatnot and pedestrians and whatnot.
Is the reason the same?
We'll
similar?
No, well, we have to actually look at that area because there is a crosswalk.
Right.
And about 2 or 3 crosswalks in that area from Quartz Megastore to El Socorro. And
it's overhead, right?
Yeah, and there are instances when people don't use the crosswalk, and that causes the accident.
I just brought that up.
Yeah.
The one thing which I thought might have been too specific, right? That might have had nothing to do with the accident. I just brought up pedestrians looking to cross the highway this morning.
But in that case, I think it was just the weather. The rain had just fallen and the road got slippery.
Right, recently. But hold on, we'll stick a fork in our, we'll get to that. We have San Fernando on the line, so we'll take the call. San Fernando, good morning. You on here?
Morning, Sean. Morning, SPRU. Nice seeing you again.
Nice.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Abba. Yeah, same to you.
Sean, I want to go back to your daily review and that bill, that Zone of Special Operations and Community Development bill. The first thing I have an issue with the bill is that part where they have community development. If you would read that section, that is an unnecessary, as far as I'm concerned, part of a security bill. Because all the things that they mentioned there, Sean, we have within the state apparatus. In community development, MPs, local government. If it is that all those agencies can't get to the root of issues within poverty alleviation within the community, now you're going to put other people. You're going to put other people to do the same job or to assess the same thing. As far as I'm concerned, that was unnecessary in the bill. That is an unnecessary part of the bill. That's just weighing down the bill. The bill is, as far as I'm concerned, I understand the intent, and I agree with the intent. There are some issues. I don't know if it's a cut and paste. I don't know if anybody proofread that thing before they presented it. It doesn't say what is accordant. In terms of the definitions under the bill, And I understand, I know what a cordon is, but for the bill, it needed to specify what a cordon is when it comes to the declaration of a zone of special operation. I have an issue. I think this bill should have had a sunset clause.
It does have a clause where it says it's reviewed after 3 years. I'm not too
that,
sure
that
if that's
review,
strong
that's
enough.
not a sunset clause.
Yes.
And I see reviewed after 3 years. I am afraid that knowing how Trinidad and Tobago operates, that we end up in a situation where, as per usual, we use this because, to be fair, we have issues with the police service in terms of bringing cases to the fore because so now the issue was, and we saw it in all these state of emergencies. Once the police once they suspend rights of citizens and police they don't need a warrant, that helps. So we understand there's a problem there in terms of the police bringing cases without trying to make cases without access to people. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. So it talks about that. I was amazed as you were at when the way they mentioned body cameras. It is time that the police service have enough body cameras.
Yeah. Yes. This is how body cameras
were mentioned. It was so nonchalant.
Yes.
It was so nonchalant. They mentioned it. If they have sufficient. Come on. So, as I said, I understand the intent, and I would always give way to the intent because we really have to keep the crime down. But there are other things that we need to fix. I hope they don't depend on the Americans to fix the border situation. We need to fix that as well. But the bill, yes, no, and here the thought I had with it. I said, I wonder if they let, and honest to God, I said this last night. I said, when I was reading it, I said, I wonder if they put ASP Arun, ASP Ali, and Mr. Calendar to read this bill. I sure they could just reading what they had there, they could point out certain things. We need to fix this, and we need to fix that, and we need to fix the other. Yeah. It was that basic, Sean, that I am certain that these three gentlemen proofread this bill and could have pointed out things that we need to fix before we present it to Parliament. But as I said, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I thought they could have done a better job, especially with the amount of attorneys they have there. I understand the reason why Mr. Sturge was the one forefront in this bill, because I don't think Mr. Alexander has the wherewithal to present this bill and argue the merits of it when the opposition comes at them. So, as I said, let's see where it goes. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for now. Have a good day.
He makes a very good point.
Thank you, Carl. I got it wrong. I think I read what he said about the body-worn cameras. I read it maybe in a media report, as opposed to how it was written in the bill. How it's written in the bill actually doesn't specify. I believe, just perusing.
Right.
It could be a bad search on my end. But yes, I read whatever Mr. Savannah was referring to. I did read it. I just can't remember where I read it. And that bothered me, right?
Maybe because it's not required by law to wear the body cameras. That's why it's...
yes, but I think...
placed like that.
The problem is, one could argue this is a policy decision that should be made, and on a political level, on a governmental level, it's hard to excuse not being more strict on this measure. We have Trinity first and Shogunas. Trinity, good morning. You on here?
Good morning, gentlemen. Happy New Year to you, Sean, and your guests.
Happy New Year.
Okay, so let's look at this thing with this bill, this new bill that was proposed and passed in Parliament. The purpose of the bill is to solve crime. Agreed? purpose of the bill is to reduce the crime rate in Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Yeah.
And I know people may have issues with what's going on in the community and community development. Your last caller alluded to the fact that there are what you may call it, state agencies in charge of community development, building community, and so on. But over the years, that has not worked in terms of how those state agencies deliver their services with regard to community development. You have to reduce crime so the community could be developed. You have to reduce crime so that children can go to their lessons, go to their music practice, go to band practice. People could come from church. Most of the crime, most of the crime is in certain political strongholds, and that may cause some discomfort, whereby you live in a political stronghold, but you have the highest crime rate. Those are the things that you have to deal with. Any measure that would reduce the amount of funerals in the area and amount of stress in the area would be very, very welcome for the whole of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? That is my 2 cents. And I hope that whilst we execute certain parts of the bill, right, the executioners of the bill, or the persons in charge of rolling out the bill, would be able to take note, take lessons from in terms of the interaction with the public, and adjust the bill as we go. And the review of the bill should not be every 3 years. The review of the bill should be, in my view, every 6 months. Every 6 months, as the law enforcement and social services get involved in the communities, they can provide feedback as to how things are working within the community, right? Because with all that is happening on the high seas, with regard to our coastal borders, the drug trade has kind of dried up. Not in the way I wanted it to dry up, but it has kind of dry up. And that is a talk for another time, right? So have a good evening, gentlemen. That is my 2 cents on the bill. Take care. God bless.
Thanks, caller. I'll try and respond to that. There are some things that I think to discuss. I wouldn't necessarily debate to make it sound like I disagree with you, but to discuss. But we do have Shagonas, I believe, waiting on the line. Caller, good morning. You on here?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
It boggles my mind why we find the most difficult way to do something.
Yeah.
Why we have this state of whatever you call them.
Zones.
Why don't you just enforce the law? Because all those areas, East River, I'll give you the history of that before, was one of the best places in the world. They had a perfect way to deal when it went bad, for reasons that was maybe on the government, how to deal with it. And the idea was to clear all those shacks all up on the hill around going up Lavanti and things. Everybody was paid for the building, right, who put in a claim. And now we hear all this stupidness. We hear about South Key. They go in and do something, and they intend to pay the people again. Those people were paid, and the government had some useful organization dealing with it. When they were told after the people collect the money, make sure and break down the building, they never break it down. So we have to deal with the cause of a problem, not what we're doing, what we call martial arts to kill our answers. Any questions or comments or queries?
No caller.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I apologize if you feel as though I didn't give you a chance to respond. There seems to be a deficiency with law enforcement in the system, not just in how the people who are conducting it. There seems to be a deficiency. And that could be because, like, just take the marijuana laws, how they were written to decriminalize certain aspects of them. It left loopholes and areas where it could be exploited to various ends, and it leaves law enforcement in a very impractical position on certain things. That's why when you go out, you could have a reasonable expectation of smelling someone smoking marijuana in public.
It's difficult to enforce
when
they haven't put things in place.
I don't necessarily want to keep going on that line, but I do appreciate, caller, what you said, because on some level, yes, it is also how we just enforce our laws, right? Because in part, if we were willing to enforce our laws properly, the deficiencies would be more apparent, not just to the police officers on the street, but also more apparent to society, to the politicians, etc., etc. And in theory, we would have gotten those fixes sooner. Like, like noise pollution, right? But we have, I still have more to say, and of course we'll let the SP weigh in, but we have Trincity on the line. Caller, good morning, you're on the air. Another Trincity, good morning.
I wanted to get Sean on this television with this police officer.
Yes.
Is this another?
No, you're on.
WSN?
No, you're on the air, caller. You're with me, Sean, and the SP.
Okay, well, I want to make a comment on what they're talking about crime.
Yes.
Ever since this country don't have proper employment for people, crime will not stop. The government come, government go. Hence the reason why crime will never stop. They need any country that is under this poverty level, crime continues. People have to eat, okay? People have to feed their children, they have to go to school. What are they talking about? A bunch of corruption ever since in country. That is the problem that they cannot address because the unemployment level for poor people is not there.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah, employment plays a major role in
I
development.
think what people kind of underestimate is, yes, a lot of people who are struggling to survive are not criminals.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
A minority of them will choose to join
commit
crime.
crimes. Yeah.
But here's where you really get the people falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
Their children now. When you think about it, a lot of criminals, they don't necessarily start off as the children of criminals.
Yeah.
They start off as the children of people who are struggling, who see their parents struggling their whole lives.
And it could only struggle for so long.
Right, and then they see the drug dealer driving a Benz.
Yeah.
And basically, to a young, impressionable mind, this is not a debate. I could struggle in a low-income job and scrunt, and then the more kids I have, literally, the more poor I am.
Yeah.
Or I could do something that could get me a Benz in 6 months.
Yeah, one strategy we've seen that worked in some major cities in some jurisdictions is that the institutions of the government coming in to assist. So I don't know if the community development incorporates that, but just the mere fact the police officers going into a community and reaching out to the community and saying and asking the community, what do you need?
Yeah.
It might be as simple as a driver's license or driver's permit, getting a driver's permit a lot easier or a bit more helpful than the way it is done now.
I think this goes to what Mr. Sanford was trying to say. And let me try and maybe be a bit more, to go further than him to clarify some things according to my point of view. On a practical level, I agree with him. Trying to include this in the bill with the zones, I don't think makes sense, especially if you have these programs, which, okay, if they're failing, then you fix the pre-existing programs. You don't just try to make a redundant program, which is what a lot of governments do this, right? Oh, this program is failing, so we make another one. Right? And more often than not, if you don't learn from the mistakes of the previous existing one, you're just going to repeat the mistakes in a different way. And the bill now could potentially try to lump law enforcement and these social transformation programs together. When, on some level, yes, you guys on the ground might have a good idea about what's going on, but your expertise is not social transformation.
No.
Right?
No.
So maybe if the bill basically say that there will be some sort of bridge to allow for communication or recommendations, but not necessarily to put it in the same infrastructure, because now if you need to, adjust certain things, and this one bill is trying to do potentially too much. Meanwhile, again, if you have deficiencies in the programs that they're not being addressed, this bill ain't addressing that.
Well, the Hearts and Minds program at IATF has addressed both the crime and the community development to some extent, and it has seemed to be very successful in certain areas in Port-of-Spain, in and around Port-of-Spain area. So I don't know if it's an extension of that program that they're trying to incorporate in the bill. I really haven't read the bill to see what the intention is.
I mean, a lot of it was actually what was presented in the media on Friday, I believe.
Right.
And I did do a quick search. It does not define what cordon says, so this seems...
Right, and that's also important because the caller did speak about that cordoning off of which area, because you may have the community would be divided by streets, and there will be the eastern side of the street, the western side of the street, or whatever, as the coordinates might point out. And that's very important, because if they want to highlight a particular community or area in a community that they want to cordon off, they would need to establish the boundaries very specifically. So they may leave it open in the bill for further specification.
Well, I mean,
so I don't know how to do that.
Here's the thing: you could have a definition legally to define
the
limits of what a cordon is, but to say, okay, what the specific, like there's certain things you can leave open, but still define, because they define what a policeman is, but they don't. But the definition doesn't include, well, a policeman is this race and this height and this weight. You know what I mean? That is left up to the whatever. It's just interesting. You define what a policeman is when some people might think, well, that's kind of self-evident. Do we really need that definition over cordon, a term that is not normally used, that the public, because now the public kind of has to, on some level, there's an expectation that now the public kind of has to know what it is, because they need to know. Not to run afoul.
So if there's a curfew in place, they need to know, well, listen, during the hours of so-and-so, I'm not allowed to cross the street and enter that area, because if I do, the police can arrest me for breach of curfew.
Now, that's another, I will say this, one of the things that the bill says, and it might be redundant, is don't be combative and don't try to interfere, right? And it goes without saying you shouldn't interfere with law enforcement functions, but I guess for whatever reason he said, oh, we're going to put it in the bill, do not interfere with law enforcement functions in the zone of special operations.
Because people still do.
Because that's the thing, it's like, I have my rights, and da-da-da, it's like, time out. On some level, once you get into criminal, you have your rights. You don't need to get all your rights right now. Because if there's a situation, law enforcement has the right to suspend your rights, to deal with a criminal situation. So just please do not try to interfere with law enforcement on any level. But a couple of other things. I do believe we have let's take the comment. My concern is not having a law in place for citizens to get redress if law enforcement stepped over their area of jurisdiction. Now, here's the thing. With regards to state of emergencies, and this to some extent, certain practicalities are similar with a state of emergency. I think there's enough precedent in common law locally with regards to redress, right? The redress might be having to sue the state, and that might take some time, because here I am talking about talking point is pointing out stories about lawsuits that are now, that were now ending in 2021, 2022 from the state of emergency in 2011. So I'm not saying it's a great means of redress, but the criminal justice system on a whole and the courts on a whole doesn't necessarily, is not known for its speed, right? The complaints authority does a whole other kettle of fish. But the areas I presume the areas to lock down would have to do with the law. Well, what crimes are committed or where criminals are located? So the crimes where criminals are located would be, as you say, narcotics and guns, being held or sold or what have you, as well as gang activity, but particularly murders from gang reprisals. Right? So there's all of that. You're not necessarily going to get home invasions. You're not going to get necessarily, well, you might also get the Facebook marketplace scammers. If you are foolish enough to go to a hotspot area with $30,000 to $80,000 in cash to buy a car.
For some reason.
For whatever reason. It's one thing to go to a community center in a relatively normal area. It's another thing to go to like East Port of Spain when, you normally wouldn't go East Port. If you normally would go East Port of Spain, that's fine.
Right. I just want to encourage members of the public, if you're going to purchase or conduct some type of transaction somewhere.
Yes. I mean, I think it's crazy to do it just about anywhere in cash, to be honest.
Please use the police station.
I apologize if it seemed like I was insulting East Port of Spain. It's not that I think it's mad to go with $80,000 in cash to East Port of Spain. I think it's mad to go anyway. St. James, Cascade, Diego Martin, St. Clair. You go on the street in St. Clair, you could probably get robbed there. So, West Moorings, it's like you walk around with tens of thousands of cash.
We actually had home invasions in St. Clair as well recently.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, I remember recently there was an attorney, a well-known attorney, sitting in his home and somebody ran in. Two guys ran in and...
To the comment, the law in place would be pre-existing laws, right? There wouldn't necessarily be anything special. I don't think you need to have a tribunal for this, although I guess with the state of emergency, there's supposed to be a tribunal with regards to, I can't remember what it is, but the thing is, this is technically less than a state of emergency, so the requirement might not be there. Perhaps this is something, you know what, perhaps this point to the commenter is something that the opposition should have brought up in the House when this bill was presented, as opposed to, you know, certain other strategies that played better to the emotional heartstrings and to the outcry of some of their supporters or some of the population, whether they support them or not. And perhaps this is a more practical concern that could have been discussed, even if, you know, we still ended up with what it is that we're going to end up. And also, to be fair to the government and the drafters of the bill, I'm not entirely sure to what extent the document that I read is like the finished product, right? Maybe it was published by Parliament. I'm not sure. I got it. Somebody sent it to me.
One thing I foresee with such a bill or such a law is that you would have persons who may not want to cooperate in terms of the curfew and would want to lime or, you know, come outside.
I mean, we saw that with COVID.
Yeah, and then, you know, unless a police patrol pass in and, you know, you run back inside, so there's a cat and mouse game, and then the police has to run you down and capture you and then warn you or arrest you. I think, I hope members of the public really, if it does come into place, the law that is, that they really cooperate with the with law enforcement on this.
Because I do think, ironically, if you want to say, oh no, officer, we're in my yard, it's my house, it's like, yeah, or is everybody at your lime a resident there? Yeah. Do they live across the street? How are they going to get home?
Yeah,
Crossing the street? Not supposed to be in the street?
So if you have a lime at home and there's a curfew in place and the police now has to come and conduct inquiries, you know, and you might want to be resistant to the inquiries because you have, the police would have reasonable cause to suspect that not everybody lives there. I would conduct inquiries to find out who lives there and who doesn't live there and whatnot. I mean, you know, and people could be a bit resistant to that as well.
Now, what is in the favor of the current government is the COVID shenanigans happened on the last government. I don't know if the UNC had any COVID shenanigans. I do believe for the 2020 election, they kind of obeyed, at least to some extent, public health regulations. The UNC, that is, from what I understand. I wasn't there to witness the campaigning or lack thereof. And you know what? Maybe other people went out to the public and met the public during a pandemic. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm not saying that anyone did anything specifically in particular. But that said, because there was a lot of rumors with regards to leadership people kind of like flouting the rules and bending the rules, my point is the current administration doesn't necessarily have to have that baggage. So, because there will be the perception of, politicians break the law all the time. Why you bothering me? It's like, technically, at least in some of these cases, that might have been the other guy. But I do feel that that is also one of the issues we have with obeying the law. When the perception is, well, politicians don't obey the law. Yeah. So why should I obey the law? You know, both parties have at least one individual in recent memory running afoul of the criminal justice system, not civil litigation. Right. So it is what it is.
Right. And Sean, just remind viewers, with respect to the carnival safety and the road safety,
yes,
the police officers would be out in the numbers, law enforcement. I know you're going to see, we normally speak about police officers, you're going to have traffic wardens, licensing officers, municipal police officers.
Well, also, we're still under state of emergency.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you know, you might get searched. Maybe, you know, they think you might be carrying stuff because you look more than just a little drunk. You might look a little high, and you leave any party a little high. And what might you have in that car, or what might you have in that cooler?
Yeah.
Leave
I have as I was telling you before, I have a friend who got a ticket. I think it was Friday. And he got a ticket because he was preparing his vehicle to get it inspected, and he was buying parts and changing. And it so happened that where he was going to change the tire, there was a roadblock right in front of his tire shop. And they issued him a ticket for no inspection sticker. And
I mean, I would imagine, you know, maybe he could contest it. Although that very much depends on the judge, I would imagine.
I advised him what was his rights and whatnot, and what he could do and whatnot. But he indicated he was going to pay the ticket. I think it was $2,000.
Oh, Lordy. Well, I mean, folks, again, it's one of those things where I understand you might disagree with a thing, but maybe...
So my point was that the police are out there in their numbers.
Exactly. you might disagree with the police
roadblocks,
being out there.
And
but
because we are seeing accidents, as I said, the road just got wet and there was a 12-car smash up that held back the country for about 2-3 hours.
I'll come back to that. We do have San Fernando on the line and we have another comment. San Fernando, good morning.
Yes, Sean, I'm calling back to see, within the bill, there was something that I wasn't, it wasn't clear about, because the zone of special operations would be conducted by police officers and law and defense force officers.
Yes.
And so I am assuming, because it's not a state of emergency, that the police officers on these exercises will be the ones in charge of the exercise. So, and they would have the powers of arrest and not the defense force officers, because the bill doesn't say that. It doesn't specify that, right? But one of the main things that I wanted to say is that if you look at the example of this being used in Jamaica, because I followed it in Jamaica when Mr. Holness implemented it, and there are lessons to be learned there in the Jamaican that we don't have to go through. And I would hope that the law enforcement community, especially those the hierarchy, look at and study some of the Jamaican issues that to make ours a better, our rollout better than the ones in Jamaica, because we have an example of what they did wrong and that type of thing, and I hope they would look at that. That's all I wanted to say. Have a good day.
It was actually successful in Jamaica in terms of reducing the murder rates.
Well, and this is the thing, right? And this goes back to, where I wanted to continue the conversation from the first caller from Trin City. Yes, it is good to suppress crime, keep people alive, reduce the murder rate. The question is crime reduced because it's suppressed? Because that implies it will grow. More, and to be fair, the state of emergency suppressed crime at the start of last year, and it did not grow before the next state of emergency happened. Right. So there was some success in the measure, right?
Yeah, but when you look at the state of emergency in 2011, crime grew after that.
Right, and that's the thing. Are you reducing crime because of solutions or because of suppression? Because suppression is theoretically temporary. Solutions would be on a certain level permanent, right? So, but I do get it. Yes, it is still good to try to suppress crime to then get, give you the breather to develop long-term solutions. It's just that the fear is we are looking at suppression as a long-term solution.
To be honest, Sean, we have to really concentrate on these gang activities. I'm being very honest.
Well, here's
that's
the
a major issue.
Because one of the criticisms, and I don't know to what extent this was a criticism in hindsight, or this was at the beginning in theory with the Jamaican zones. The thought was, well, it's not going to do anything but transnational crime, which feeds local crime. Right. But since we have a situation that Trin City pointed it out, the drug trade is forcibly being reduced. It's being suppressed with violence. And that gives our local authorities, TPS and others.
Yeah, so that's aiding us in...
yes. Yeah. Now the gangs aren't backed up by this transnational drug network that's going to bring in drugs and guns. Right. So now you all just have to worry about the local low-level stuff. Well, relatively speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, but the gangs seem to be an issue for the TTPS.
Yes.
And that's why we need to concentrate on them. So whatever law comes into place, it's not meant to target innocent persons. It's not meant to target persons who go about their daily lives and whatnot.
So I'll say this, because I brought this up with Ashraf last week. One of the things with the law is the Joint Command has seemingly two parallel commanders, one for the police, one for the defense force. Right. Now, generally speaking, that tends not to be a good thing, because you need to have one person in charge. But Ashraf told me, in his experience, you all understand your roles, and the individuals work together very well.
Very well, yeah.
My thing is, that is not the system making sure you don't have an issue.
No, it's individuals.
That's the individuals. Yeah. And the problem with that is, and when you have individuals that are not on that level, and you're not guaranteed in perpetuity, right? Then if you have deficiencies with the individuals, you'll have deficiencies with the execution. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things. With things like this, similar to politics, right? the reason why you want, you know, certain reforms in campaign financing and the Constitution is you need systems in place because you can't take it for granted that the good politicians, quote unquote, in theory, that you might have now is going to be there forever. History has shown all it takes is one fool to take advantage of whatever is there to take advantage of, and then you have a problem. That's why a dictator will never wake. You might get a benevolent dictator. You might be so lucky that you might get a benevolent dictator. Some people might say the guy in El Salvador or Ecuador is a benevolent dictator.
Yeah.
But if you're not careful, his successor, whether it's hereditary or whether it's elected, might not respond on the same level, might not take the responsibility the same way. So let's not take for granted we actually have a good subset of police officers now and soldiers that do want to solve the issue. But you kind of have to put things in the law as a check and balance to ensure that you don't get a rogue agent, you know, doing whatever. Because unfortunately, the public perception is they do have, at least to some extent, rogue agents in the police service, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, and they get a lot of the press, I get it, and they might be the minority, but it might be a significant enough minority where I could see where the public now, to help with trust and confidence, wants that reassurance, because the more they trust and have confidence in the TPS, the more they will cooperate.
We understand that.
Okay, quick, let's take the comments. Where are they working cameras on the light poles, eye in the sky, blimp, helicopter? Do we have any helicopters? Helicopters are expensive. I've already said I think drones could be our replacement for helicopter operations, and more cost effective. But of course, you could, you know, it depends on implementation. We should have scanners to enter FETs. That, to some extent, is dependent on the FETs. I don't know to what extent you could say national security should have scanners for FETs, because then you have to have a scanner for every FET. Of course, you'll have to have more than one scanner, etc., you know. Gary had it locked down in fighting crime. Man, it was during COVID. That is a subjective statement, and I'll leave that there. Why not bring Gary in the UNC? You have to ask them. You have to ask them. He wanted to, but you have to ask them. Morgan just speak about the same thing. We keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Now, to some extent, this is not entirely true, but one could argue it seems as though one of the few things that work, because we can't deal with the legislation problems and the criminal justice problems. So state of emergency. And we had a year where, oh, this seems to work. Let's get a junior state of emergency to kind of keep it going. The flip side is, to some extent, hey, they did it in Jamaica. So this is not necessarily a tactic that is like, you know, it comes out of a stupid place. Right? It does seem as though we're relying on a thing too much, and maybe we're not dealing with the other issues that's plaguing our criminal justice system. And then I just wanted to close going back to road safety, because I pointed out there was a situation where a pedestrian last year, I might have spoken about it with you, got knocked down and died.
Right.
And my thing is to tell people, because you're saying in El Socorro, some of the accidents might have something to do with people not going on the crosswalks,
correct,
on the walkover. Thank you. And my thing is, if you're a pedestrian, you're not just risking your life. You are risking not just the car that may or may not hit you, but a whole slow, because it's a highway. And the pile up now, depending on the time, because if it's a time where there's very little traffic, it's a highway, they're going to be faster.
Yeah, I remember it's the same era, about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, there was an accident on the same highway. I think a guy was crossing. And that accident caused another accident on the westbound lane. Because on the, so they were slowed down, and because people slowed down to see, it caused the traffic. It was at night, so the traffic coming at a high speed crashed into the vehicles in front.
I saw a clip. This was in China. There was fog, and the people on the accident kept trying to wave oncoming cars who are not expecting a barrier. That is to say, like there was like 10 cars, right? So one kept crashing into the other. And people might think, oh, that can't happen here. Depending on rain and night, that can happen here. That can happen here. But hey, I don't drive at the speed limit for a reason, right? so those that want to go at 140, you ain't going to have reaction time. So it is what it is. I think that's more or less it. We're more or less out of time. So Chris, it's good to see you again. We didn't see you for the whole, more or less the whole Christmas.
I'm on the mend. I'm getting better things. Just want to say thanks a lot to the staff at Mount Hope dialysis ward. They treated me very well. Doing it elsewhere now, but the treatment was excellent. Dr. Diraj and the nurses, excellent work, and they treated me very well. And I just want to say thanks very much.
Which is important because we need to remember we might have complaints about various aspects of the public service, the teaching service, the fire service, the police service, the public health system, but to assume that it's all bad would be a mistake.
It was simple. It was easy to complain about things, but I recognize it was beyond their control. They had certain things that were limited, but the treatment was excellent in terms of the,
And that's what I want to say. There are people that keep these things running, that are working hard, right? So please, with that said, thanks to the callers, thanks to the commenters, thanks, Chris, for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me again.
And hopefully we'll see you next week. God willing, nothing gets in the way of that.
No.
And as I would say, it's nice to be nice. So be nice to the fireman, police officer, traffic warden, public servants, nurses, doctors, whoever that works for the government to try to provide you with a service, whether you like it or not, because the service could also be a ticket to say that you need to, fix your light. But be nice to them because you never know. Not all of them are the bad apples, quote unquote. Some of them are the good ones. Why stress them out further? They're just doing their job. Their job is in part to help all of us, right? You don't want to get the good ones to run off because they can't deal with the stress anymore. And trust me, that is a thing. So it's nice to be nice, even to the public servants. Stay safe, remember your allegiance to the public and to each other. Try not to vilify your fellow Trinbagonian in whatever reason, whatever debate. We'll see each other tomorrow. Slow down. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Engagements with such agencies as Google, Microsoft, Cisco, and Amazon. She is the recipient of the Happiness Award from the British Parliament in 2019. And she's been appointed as a Goodwill Ambassador by the World Psychiatric Association. Her discussions include the path to forgiveness and healing, recognizing and accepting, which is filled with compassion for self and others, the beginning of recognizing the path to emotional health and happiness. She's to deliver a featured